What's up, everyone? All right, so the market is selling off, but you know what? I'm sitting here in the green. And this is the really powerful thing about being a day trader. This whole week, my account is cash at night. So it doesn't matter how much the S&P 500 drops. I sit down each morning and I'm looking for one or two stocks that have a unique catalyst and a reason to go higher. And guess what? Today, even though the market was dropping, there were a couple stocks that were squeezing up. One of them was a rare earth company. Now that kind of made sense because of these tariffs coming in from overseas. So a domestic rare earth company that's squeezing up a little bit. All right, that squeezed up like 50%. We had another stock that squeezed up over 100%. This one is a little bit of a meme stock. It's American Rebel, attracting investors who are patriotic, beer drinkers, and love America. So this stock squeezed up 100%. It went up a couple days ago as well. Rode the momentum on that, and I'm sitting here up over $20,000 on the day. And now I've closed everything down. My account is back to cash. So what happens for the rest of the day in the S&P 500 doesn't really matter. And that's the really interesting thing. If we jump onto the chart here, onto the screen share, we look at the chart of the S&P 500. I'll just look back at the last 10 years. So last 10 years here, I've traded through all of this. And there's no doubt that, you know, when the market is really, really strong, like when we had this rally coming out, sort of during the pandemic, we had stimulus and everything else. You know, this is a period, of course, we had the GameStop short squeeze in 2021. I made a lot of money. That was a really good year. And during 2022, I did pretty well. 2023, interestingly, even though the overall market was going up, I didn't do as well. So, you know, what's kind of funny is that my performance, although there's some relation to the overall market, it's also based just on actual small cap companies, which are the stocks between 2 and 20, which are putting out news. And some years we get into these cycles where we have incredible moves in the small cap market, and other times things get a little bit colder. And they can be colder while the overall market's really hot. And small caps can be hot when the overall market is really cold. So it's kind of, you know, they don't have a direct correlation. Now, I generally would say I'd rather trade in a bull market than a bear market, but it doesn't stop me from making money in the bear market. Each of these years here, going back 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, all of these years, I traded through all of this. And, you know, I had some fantastic years, even when the overall market was struggling. So with the overall market dropping here, well, there's no doubt about it. We're on a little bit of a pullback. The interesting thing here that I'll say is that this pullback is not the result of a financial crisis. You know, we're not worried right now about big banks failing. We did have to worry about that a little bit in 2023 with Silicon Valley Bank going under, First National, First Republic, whatever bank, you know, because of the interest rates going so high that created a crunch in for a lot of these smaller sort of regional banks. But we're not dealing with a financial crisis right now. This drop in the market is 100% tied to the tariffs. So if it really got bad, obviously that policy could be backed out. You know, you could unwind it, and then presumably the market would recover, although there would be some struggling for some of the companies that have been most affected by this. You know, so, you know, not to get in too deep into the politics of it, but what I think is interesting just from sort of an economic stability standpoint is that this is kind of self-imposed. Just like the interest rate hike that caused the market to pull back in 2022 was self-imposed. Whereas in 2008, or even during the dot-com bubble, you know, the crashes that followed there were much more, systemic. I mean, they were much more significant and I think concerning for kind of the economy in a very different way. So, you know, as we stand right now, the market's kind of back to the level of August. All right. So, you know, we've kind of given back 6 months here. But of course, when we were sitting in July and August, we were all feeling really great because the market was like at all-time highs. We're like, this is fantastic. So we were happy when the price was, 500 here, but now it's 500 and we're like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. So perspective is important. But for me, it really doesn't matter that much because I'm just going to focus on trading what's right in front of me and what's moving. So here's how I approached it today. I sat down bright and early, 6:45. I pulled up my scanners, and lo and behold, we've got some penny stocks that are up. All right, IBO up 80%. ICCT, this one's going again today. This is great to see. It's up another 60%. And so this is another good example because while the market has been dropping, we'll just get zoomed in on this. You know, this has gone from 40 cents a share all the way to $7. So, 1,500% over the course of the last week while the market's been selling off. AREB, I traded this one. I'll show you my trades on that. CXAI, did not trade this one. A little too cheap for me. USAR, traded this one. This is the US rare earth company. So why don't we look at this one first? We could look at ICCT. So I actually did get a trade on ICCT as well. We'll look at ICCT first because this was the first trade that I took this morning. So ICCT had popped up, then pulled back, kind of popped up, pulled back, was going lower, came up here, started squeezing higher, and it dips down, and then it pops up right here, it pulls back. So let me go back to my very first trade of the morning. All right, so very first trade was at about 752, so that was right in here. And what I was doing on this trade, we're gonna have to actually back this up. So on this setup right here, I did a 10-second micro pullback. ICCT was squeezing up right here, and I did a 10-second micro pullback right in there. So let's look at that chart on the 10-second time frame. All right, so 10-second time frame. All right, so right here. So I bought right there. That little micro pullback is where I got in. And I bought about 513, 515, and 518. Now it ends up popping up to a high of 520, going sideways, going to 526, and then dropping back down. So I got in it, and I got out, and I lost $51.44. Not bad. That's a manageable loss. That's no big deal. So I got in, I got out, it didn't work, and I was like, all right, here's the time to kind of throw out the caution flag. If you remember on Tuesday and the Tuesday before, my first trade on both of those days was kind of a small break-even trade like that. And then my second trade, I got a little aggressive and went red. So today, my second trade after this small loss on ICCT was USAR. So USAR, this was kind of interesting. This pops up, and you could see this nice move here all the way up to 1040. But my first trade on it was right here. I saw it on the scanner, and at this point, it was up about 30%. I pulled up the chart, and I saw that it had a high of 770, and then all of a sudden, it starts popping up to 8, to 810, 815. I jumped on 815, and I said, mental stop, $8. It squeezes up to 9, and then instantly comes back to 760, and I lost, and I went red on it. And I thought, well, I did jump on that pretty quickly. Maybe I should have waited for a better setup. Now, it did curl back up later, and I got another trade on it later as it curled back up. So I made back half my loss, but only half. So on this trade right here, I lost 2,000 bucks, and then I made back 1,000 as it came back up here. Let's look at the P&L on the day. Sitting at $20,523.94 with all of the profit coming from AREB. Red on ICCT, red on USAR. So AREB is the one that saved the day today, although it could have been USAR if I'd been a little more focused on it. But AREB, so what ended up happening with this stock? Well, if we look at the 5-minute chart, this is a stock that made a really big move back on, I think it was Wednesday. Popped up, pulled back, popped up to 845. This went from $1 to 845. Okay, now this is American Rebel Holdings. American Rebel Holdings invites patriotic investors, fans, and beer enthusiasts to celebrate freedom with a new video release highlighting the American Rebel story. My God. It doesn't get much more patriotic than that. So this stock got some momentum on Wednesday. It ends up pulling back on Thursday. And then this morning, it came back up. So, let me jump back into this. So let's see, let's pull up a couple indicators here. So I'm gonna go like this right here. I don't know if that's super valid, taps twice, maybe. That's basically a flat line, so that's just a double top. A little ascending support down around here. And this one was on the scanner even pretty early this morning because it was gapping up slightly. It was gapping up just enough that it was on the scanner. It was gapping up like maybe 28%, 30%, something like that. It was not a big gap, but it was gapping up a little bit. And then all of a sudden right here, we get this pop. And the first potential resistance was this descending resistance. And then the next level was 575, which was this high right here. And that was also matching the pre-market high pretty much from yesterday. But above 575, we had pretty much a clean shot up to 790. And then we had room up to the high from yesterday, or from Wednesday, which was 840. So, and we went right to 845, and then we pulled back. All right, so this is how I traded this one. We'll do 10-second chart. All right, so basically, all of a sudden, this thing pops up right here. Boom, and there's your first pullback, the micro pullback. I've been telling you guys about this setup. I tell you about it pretty much every day. So I'll put a link again to my micro pullback strategy PDF. Download that PDF, print it out, and print out this chart right here. And next time you see a stock squeezing up right here, and that stock meets all 5 criteria of stock selection, watch for that pullback pattern. Pay attention to it. You have to train your eye to recognize it. Because the fact is, in real time, this is what you're seeing. So you have to be able to visualize what's coming next. And that's what traders get really good at doing. It's pattern recognition and making a prediction of what is going to happen next. So over 550 goes right to 6. Awesome. Pulls back, goes up to 630. Micro pullback up to 650. Another little dip, little pullback here, and then punches up to 7. Micro pullback right here at 690, and it goes up to 740. This was phenomenal. Now, the thing that's interesting is I made the bulk of my profit on it. Well, I was up about $15,000 as of like right here. So that first leg, which was only about 6 minutes long, was really profitable. And then we kept dipping, double bottom off of 697 and little trade. Double bottom, little profit. Double bottom, little profit. Double bottom. Well, no, it's now like a quadruple bottom. And I said, be careful, because if this now breaks, I'm worried. And why did I think it might break here? Well, let's pull up the 1-minute chart and let me show you another perspective. So we were doing all these sort of bottoms right here, and then the MACD crossed into the negative. So when the MACD went negative, I was like, that could be a problem. We dipped down, but what's interesting is we got a bounce off the VWAP and then right back over 690. So I ended up getting back in right there at 7. It pops back up to 740. Now this was a riskier trade, which I took with smaller size because MACD was negative. It pulls back, and then right here it squeezes, pulls away up to 8. Well, just under 8. It goes up to 780. Dips down, pops up to 790, and then right here we do the same thing, where it kept bouncing, 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 and then finally it ripped. And it went up to 840, but then it couldn't pull away. At the open, I gave back maybe about $1,000 on it. It dropped down, halted down, went lower, pulled back, and now is rallying back up. So you guys might get more opportunities on this, but in any case, the cleanest move was in the beginning, and certainly the cleanest move was before that first MACD crossover. High volume, light volume selling. I mean, this was really solid. So, I was pleasantly surprised. Locked up $21,539.88 just on that stock. That one stock, really changed the day. So all of a sudden got the day really moving. But if it hadn't been that, I could have waited around for ICCT, which ended up making a nice move here at the open from 5 all the way up to 750. And we've got other stocks that are going to be hitting the scanners as the day goes on. So regardless of the overall market, there are always individual stocks that are bucking the trend because they've got a catalyst. And I think that's the important thing to remember. So regardless of where you are in your experience, something that can be really tough is avoiding the temptation on a day like today to trade Nike or Lululemon or, the S&P 500 or the VIX because you're thinking they're volatile. And a lot of traders will get sucked into that and they'll end up losing money. They'll realize, wow, trading those types of stocks, unless you're trading with the trend of the market, which is just sort of riding it down. But honestly, the bulk of the sell-off this morning on the S&P was pre-market. And now for the most part, we're just kind of within the range. So it's usually the cleanest when you're breaking a low. So if you break a low, it'll be clean. Or when you're breaking a high, moving back up. But at this point, you're not going to have that for a while. So I encourage you to really think about your strategy and not to try to optimize your strategy for making money on the rare days when the entire market is down 3 or 4%. Those days don't happen that often. Yesterday was the worst day in the market in 5 years. So if you had a strategy where you could make a lot of money on that day, that's great, but it only comes along once every 5 years. So it's not really going to be that helpful. Whereas a strategy you can depend on pretty much every day, and maybe on some of those really high volatility days, you scale it back a little bit, I think that's going to be a better way to go. So if you want to learn more about my strategy, make sure you download that micro pullback strategy PDF. And you know what? I'm going to put a link to a full-length episode right here, a full-length training that I think you guys will really enjoy, walking you through how to how to perform technical analysis the right way. Because what I'm doing each day is technical analysis. All right, so thank you guys as always for tuning in. I hope you had a great week. And reminder as always, trading is risky. My results aren't typical, so please manage your risk, take it slow. And I'll see you guys back here bright and early Monday morning.